Welcome back everyone. Today's video is the next episode of the Time Chamber series. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. With that said, please drop a like as usual, leave a comment, and let's begin.
Cross my heart and hope to die. Welcome to my dark side.
From the towering heights of Korin's lookout, Vegeta, now enveloped in the radiant aura of his blue transformation, gazed intently at the planet below. The atmosphere around him crackled with power, yet a deep unease gnawed at his heart. The planet was only minutes away from obliteration, its fate sealed. His brow furrowed, and a rare twinge of guilt pierced through his normally unshakable resolve. My family, I should have never left for so long, he murmured to himself, the regret heavy in his voice. Desperation surged through him as he placed 2 fingers on his forehead, attempting to locate Bulma's energy signature. But to his shock, he couldn't sense her on Earth. His heart pounded faster as he concentrated harder, tracing her energy across the vastness of space. It was then he realized she was far from Earth, and worse yet, she wasn't alone. The other Z fighters were with her, their energy flickering weakly, almost extinguished. In an instant, Vegeta vanished, reappearing on a spaceship drifting through the cold expanse of space. The transition was seamless, his body materializing directly in front of Piccolo. The Namekian was the first to react, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Vegeta, you're here?" Piccolo muttered, his voice thick with astonishment. He had sensed the arrival of Broly and had braced himself for the worst, but Vegeta appearing so suddenly was beyond what he had expected. His senses were on high alert, every muscle tensed, ready for anything. He scanned the area quickly, searching for the others. "Where are Kakarot and Gohan? Aren't they with you? Or are they still on Earth, fighting Broly?" Piccolo demanded, his voice edged with urgency. But then he noticed the change in Vegeta's expression. The proud Saiyan warrior's face had fallen, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something darker, something akin to shame. Vegeta's fists clenched tightly as he muttered under his breath, "Kakarot, you always had to be the hero, didn't you? You idiot." His voice wavered, a mix of anger and sorrow, the conflict within him palpable. He replayed the recent events in his mind. Goku's sacrifice to save him, the portal closing behind Vegeta while Kakarot stayed behind. Goku could have escaped, but he chose to throw Vegeta to safety instead. "Kakarot, if you're still alive, you'd better stay that way," Vegeta growled, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Dragon Balls are gone. There's no coming back this time. If you don't want your family to suffer, you'll find a way to survive. After I deal with the mess on Earth, I'll come back for you, and then I'll repay the debt I owe you." Piccolo watched Vegeta carefully, his sharp eyes noticing every nuance of the Saiyan's expression. There was a heaviness in the air, an unspoken truth that Piccolo dreaded to hear. "What happened to them, Vegeta?" Piccolo's voice trembled slightly, his tough exterior cracking. "What happened to Gohan?" The fear in his voice was unmistakable, a father's fear for his child. Vegeta's face hardened as he met Piccolo's gaze. "Gohan is dead." The words were like daggers, sharp and final. Vegeta's mind flashed back to the battle, the moment he saw Gohan fall. The pain in his eyes mirrored Piccolo's, a shared grief between warriors. Piccolo staggered back, his emotions a whirlwind of shock, anger, and despair. He knew the Dragon Balls were inactive, their power spent on a wish to empower him. The weight of the loss was almost unbearable, but Vegeta wasn't done. "And Goku? He's been captured. He might already be dead, considering who we were up against," Vegeta continued, his voice grim. "Even at full strength, we didn't stand a chance. In fact, that brat looked like he was toying with us." Vegeta's fists tightened until his knuckles turned white. Then, with a low, dangerous tone, he added, "But if I know Kakarot, he won't die just yet, not until I've had the chance to kill him myself." In another part of the ship, Chi-Chi was returning from the bathroom when she overheard Vegeta's words. The world seemed to stop as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Her son, her beloved Gohan, was dead. The pain was instant and overwhelming, a mother's worst nightmare coming to life. Her knees buckled and she collapsed to the floor, her mind unable to process the grief. "No, no. My Gohan," she whimpered, her voice breaking. Then the dam of her emotions burst, and she screamed, a heart-wrenching cry of pure agony. Her firstborn son was gone, and her husband could be dead too. Chi-Chi's world crumbled around her as she sobbed uncontrollably. Her heart shattered into pieces. The piercing scream from Chi-Chi sent shockwaves through the ship, drawing everyone's attention. Without a second thought, Goten sprinted toward the source of the cry, his heart pounding with fear. Right behind him was Bulma, her face etched with worry. They burst into the room, finding Chi-Chi on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom!" Goten cried out, rushing to his mother's side. His voice was filled with concern and confusion. "What's wrong? What happened?" Bulma, who had been right behind him, skidded to a halt as her eyes fell on Vegeta. Her breath caught in her throat. The sight of him standing there was almost too much to believe. After all the chaos, she had prayed for his return, and now he was here. But the look on his face, the grim, sorrowful expression, told her that the news he brought was not good. Anger bubbled up inside her, but it was tempered by the sight of Chi-Chi's anguish. Bulma's fists clenched at her sides. She wanted to lash out, to scream at Vegeta for not coming sooner, for leaving them all in this mess. She wanted to slap him for not being there when she and Bulla needed him most, when they were scared and defenseless. But as she looked at Chi-Chi's tear-streaked face, her rage melted into empathy. Chi-Chi was in a world of pain, and no amount of anger could fix that. Chi-Chi's cries continued, a raw, heart-wrenching sound that filled the room with grief. Her body shook with sobs, her hands clutching her chest as if trying to hold her heart together. Then, through the tears, she choked out the words that shattered everyone's hope. My Gohan is dead." Her voice cracked, each word a dagger to the heart. She looked up at Vegeta, desperation and disbelief in her eyes. "Goku! How could you let them kill my son? How could you let them kill you?" The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, suffocating the room in sorrow. Bulma turned her gaze to Vegeta, searching his face for any sign that this was some kind of terrible mistake. But the pained expression he wore told her everything she needed to know. It was true. They were gone. Gohan, Goku, both lost to them forever. Krillin, standing off to the side, felt his world crumble. Out of all the Z fighters, the loss hit him the hardest. His eyes were wide with shock, his breath shallow as the reality set in. The Dragon Balls on Earth were gone, used up in a desperate wish. That meant those who had fallen were gone for good. Tien, Yamcha, Gohan, Goku. Krillin's voice was barely a whisper at first, but it quickly rose to a shout, his grief overwhelming him. "We can't bring them back!" But as the weight of the loss bore down on everyone, Piccolo's eyes suddenly widened in realization. How could he have forgotten? The answer had been there all along, but the chaos had clouded his mind. He slammed his hands against the wall of the ship, frustration mingling with a newfound hope. "Wait, there is a way!" Piccolo's voice cut through the despair, making everyone turn to him. "The Dragon Balls, we can still use the ones on my home planet. Planet Namek. Porunga can grant up to 3 wishes." Everyone's eyes lit up with a renewed sense of hope. Even Chi-Chi, who moments before had been drowning in grief, looked up with a flicker of light in her tear-filled eyes. The possibility of bringing everyone back was within reach. Krillin nearly jumped out of his skin with excitement. "We can bring them all back! We could even wish for this whole war to be over." He was almost giddy with the thought, his mind racing with the possibilities. But before he could finish, Vegeta's voice roared over him, cutting through the excitement like a blade. "No!" Vegeta's face twisted in anger as he stared down Krillin. "How dare you suggest such a thing? I am a Saiyan, damn it. The prince of all Saiyans. How could you even think I would take such a coward's way out? Don't you have any pride as a warrior? I will not win like that. I will win with my own power." The fury in Vegeta's voice was undeniable. It was the pride of a warrior who refused to accept anything less than victory on his own terms. Without another word, he turned away from them, his body trembling with rage. And in the blink of an eye, Vegeta was gone, teleporting back to Earth, where Broly awaited. The rest of the group was left standing in silence, the hope that had just begun to grow now flickering uncertainly in the shadows of Vegeta's departure. "Long time no see," Vegeta said, his voice low and filled with simmering rage. He didn't take his eyes off Abaddon, his focus like a razor's edge. The air around him crackled with tension as his energy flared, causing the ground beneath him to tremble. The sheer force of his power made the atmosphere heavy, and it was clear that Vegeta was on the brink of unleashing something devastating. Broly, standing a short distance away, couldn't tear his gaze from the scene unfolding before him. The sight of Abaddon ignited something primal within him, a seething anger that was barely contained. "That one's mine," Broly growled, his voice thick with vengeance. His eyes narrowed as they locked onto Abaddon. "He's the one who was part of the group that killed Gohan. I want him for myself. I'll make him suffer the same fate Gohan did." The pain of losing Gohan still burned fresh in his heart, and Broly's desire for revenge was undeniable. Turning his attention to the other presence on the battlefield, Broly nodded toward the distant figure. "The angel is all yours," he said to Vegeta, his tone resolute. Broly then shifted his focus entirely to Abaddon, preparing himself for the fight ahead. This time, there would be no holding back. He was ready to unleash his full power, free from the constraints of conserving energy. Before, he had been forced to fight cautiously, facing two powerful foes simultaneously, unsure of the full extent of their strength. But now, with Vegeta at his side, he could go all out. Vegeta's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "The angel, huh?" he muttered to himself. His mind raced as he tried to recall the angel's name, but it eluded him. "No matter," he said, dismissing the thought. This could be tricky. Vegeta's entire demeanor shifted as he prepared for battle, his face becoming a mask of seriousness. He knew what was coming, and he was ready for it. And then it happened. A transformation that had long been anticipated, long feared by those who knew of its potential, began to take shape. Vegeta's body surged with power as he ascended into a form beyond what anyone had seen before. Ultra Ego 3. But this was no ordinary transformation. It was a form honed through centuries of battle, through trials that had pushed Vegeta to the very brink of death. He had faced angels, demons, gods of destruction, and even Zeno himself, emerging stronger each time. The boost in power he had received from these near-death experiences was astronomical, elevating him to a level that defied comprehension. As Vegeta stood there, radiating this newfound power, Abaddon's eyes widened in shock. He could hardly believe what he was witnessing. It wasn't just the raw power that stunned him. It was Vegeta's aura, an aura that resonated with the essence of a true demon god. It was unlike anything Abaddon had encountered in a mortal. To him, Vegeta was no mere warrior. He was a primordial demon god, a being of pure destruction. The aura around Vegeta wasn't just similar to that of a demon. It was identical, carrying the unmistakable signature of one who had perfected the art of destruction, far beyond what any god of destruction could achieve. "How can this be?" Abaddon's voice trembled with disbelief as he took a step back, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. What has happened in the time we were locked away? Has that child Zeno been experimenting with the demon race again? The questions swirled in his mind, each more troubling than the last. Vegeta, a mortal, was now on par with some of the strongest beings in the demon race. The very idea was unthinkable. Abaddon's confusion quickly turned to suspicion. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. How had a mortal like Vegeta achieved such power? How had he come to possess the aura of a true demon god? And more importantly, how could Abaddon reclaim that power for himself? No matter how much Vegeta's aura felt like that of a demon, Abaddon knew one undeniable truth. Vegeta was still immortal, and that made him vulnerable. As Vegeta stood there, his eyes locked on Abaddon, the battlefield seemed to shrink around them. The air was thick with tension, and it was clear that a clash of unimaginable proportions was about to unfold. Abaddon, standing tall and mighty, turned his attention fully toward Vegeta. His eyes burned with the desire for battle, and his aura flared like a raging inferno, causing the earth beneath them to tremble violently. The ground cracked and split, and the impending destruction of the planet seemed to accelerate as Abaddon's power surged. For Abaddon, the Earth's imminent destruction was little more than an inconvenience. He knew that it wouldn't harm him in the slightest. His race possessed regenerative capabilities that far surpassed even those of Cell and Kid Buu. As for Konik, his nature was different, almost enigmatic. Konik wasn't a real being in the traditional sense. He was the manifestation of something far more complex, something that would be revealed in due time. But for now, the focus was on the battle at hand. "It seems he's chosen me," Vegeta muttered, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. His eyes gleamed with anticipation. The thrill of the fight, the challenge that lay ahead, ignited something deep within him. Broly, standing nearby, felt a pang of irritation at being ignored, but he quickly swallowed his pride. He knew better than to challenge Vegeta for this fight. Vegeta was more than capable of handling Abaddon, and Broly respected that. Placing a hand on Vegeta's shoulder, Broly leaned in and spoke in a low, menacing tone. "Make it painful. I want to hear him scream. I want the stench of death to fill the air." With that, Broly turned his attention to Konik, who was standing off to the side, seemingly deep in thought. Konik had heard rumors that the Sign Warriors had been captured by their father, the Grand Priest himself. The fact that Vegeta was here, standing strong and defiant, puzzled him. How could Vegeta have possibly escaped? But before he could delve further into his thoughts, Broly moved. In an instant, Broly closed the distance between them, moving with a speed that was nothing short of astonishing. Konik barely had time to react. The Saiyan was upon him in less than a millisecond, his fist rocketing toward Konik with incredible force. Caught off guard, Konik could only watch as the massive blow came hurtling toward him. However, just as Broly's fist was about to connect, a sphere of pure white energy materialized around Konik, shielding him from the attack. The sphere had formed in response to the danger, acting independently, just like the staff Whis had given to Goku. The protective barrier absorbed the impact of Broly's punch, but the force behind it was so immense that it sent the sphere hurtling backward into a nearby mountain, leveling it in an instant. As the dust settled, Konik emerged from the rubble unscathed, but the look on his face had changed. Gone was the confident smile, replaced by a cold, determined glare. He now realized that this Saiyan, Broly, had been holding back. The time for underestimation was over. Konik's pride as an angel, one of the most powerful among them, flared up. The idea of being forced to the ground, having to look up at a Saiyan, was utterly humiliating. It felt as though he was a lowly creature being looked down upon by its master, and the indignity of it made his blood boil. With a roar of pure fury, Konik unleashed a wave of energy that shook the very fabric of the universe. The roar was like a tidal wave of power, far beyond anything seen before. It wasn't just a sound, it was a force that swept across Universe 7, causing planets to tremble and life forms to faint from the sheer pressure. On Earth, those who were not already unconscious dropped like flies. Even Bulma and most of the Z fighters aboard the ship succumbed to the overwhelming force, their bodies crumpling as they lost consciousness. The only one left standing was Piccolo. His mind, the strongest among them, struggled against the onslaught of Konik's power. He fought to keep himself upright, his knees buckling under the strain. The ship, fortunately, was on autopilot, its course set for Namek, sparing them from drifting aimlessly in space. Piccolo gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of the energy pressing down on him, but he refused to fall. He knew that if he did, all hope might be lost. His mind raced as he tried to think of a way to counter the sheer magnitude of the power that Konik had just unleashed. But for now, all he could do was endure, hoping that Vegeta and Broly could turn the tide before it was too late. Broly froze in his tracks, his massive body locked in place by the overwhelming power of Konik's roar. Though he remained conscious, the force of the attack had clearly shaken him. Even Vegeta and Abaddon, powerful as they were, felt the effect. The sheer pressure of the Angel's energy was undeniable. To think that the Angel was hiding this level of power, Abaddon muttered, his voice laced with disdain. This must be a new technique. The Angel never used this during the Great War among demons and chickens, he added with a scornful chuckle, mocking the angelic race with a sneer. Vegeta, his body still reeling from the attack, placed his hand over his heart. He needed to jolt his system back into action. Summoning a charge of lightning, he sent a powerful electric surge coursing through his body, forcing his muscles to respond. The attack had been potent, but Vegeta knew it was necessary. His body had reacted instinctively to the danger, momentarily paralyzed by fear. But Vegeta would not tolerate such weakness. He was in control, and he needed to remind himself of that. Abaddon quickly followed suit, shaking off the effects of the attack. However, Broly was different. Instead of trying to regain control, Broly's anger began to rise, along with his power. Konik watched in growing alarm as Broly's energy continued to spike. "He's hiding even more power," Konik shouted, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Or Is he learning as he fights? The thought unsettled him. Whatever the cause, Konik knew he had to stop Broly before it was too late. But Broly wasn't like Vegeta or Abaddon. He didn't resist the power surging within him. He embraced it. With a thunderous stomp, Broly made the earth quake beneath him. Dark electricity crackled around his body, his power spiraling out of control. The red fur covering his body began to darken, turning black as Broly tapped into his monstrous side. In an instant, he had transformed, unleashing his most powerful form to date, Dark Super Saiyan 5. This transformation was as dangerous as it was powerful. Broly's bloodlust and thirst for destruction were at their peak, his mind consumed by the berserker rage that came with the form. Although he retained some semblance of control, his personality had shifted dramatically, making him an unpredictable and deadly force. That monster, Konik whispered, his voice filled with astonishment and fear. Broly's transformation had pushed him beyond anything Konik had expected. I need to end this fight now, Konik realized. If the battle continued, Broly might become too powerful to defeat. For the first time since the battle began, Konik shifted from a defensive stance to a more aggressive posture. He was ready to strike. But before any action could be taken, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Time had run out, and the countdown to Earth's destruction had reached its final moments. The planet, already on the brink of collapse, erupted in a massive explosion. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. The Earth shattered, the force of the explosion spreading through the void of space like a supernova. The sight was terrifying, as it appeared that everyone on the battlefield had been caught in the blast, swallowed by the cataclysmic destruction. Inside Bulma's ship, a shrill alarm began to blare, jolting the unconscious passengers awake. No, 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 no! Bulma gasped, her heart sinking as she realized what had happened. The Earth, it's gone! Vegeta's voice echoed in her mind, a desperate hope clinging to his words. I hope you're okay. Are they dead? Krillin asked, his voice trembling with panic. Is the universe doomed? Piccolo, his senses still sharp, quickly scanned for any sign of life. Wait, I can sense their energy, he said, a look of shock spreading across his face. They're not dead. I can still feel them. Broly's alive, Chi-Lai shouted, her voice filled with a mix of relief and determination. And Vegeta is too, I know it. There's no way Broly would leave me behind. He promised. We need to have faith in them, and in the plan. As the ship hurtled through space toward planet Namek, the sense of urgency was palpable. His scene shifts dramatically to an ominous, shadowy realm, where the air itself seems heavy with mystery. In the darkness, a figure looms, a towering, ape-like being, its features hidden in the shadows, only the faintest glint of light catching its fierce, gleaming eyes. This creature is unlike anything seen in the known universe, its presence exuding an ancient power that transcends time. He is the true god of the Saiyans, a being who predates even Zeno, the Omni King. This god wasn't created by Zeno. He existed long before, from an era when Zeno's father ruled, alongside Zalama, the dragon god. They were the first, the only two beings crafted without restraint, forged from the raw essence of creation itself. And this particular being, this ancient god, was named Wukong, the Monkey King. The scene shifts again, this time to a dimension beyond comprehension. It is a place that lies outside the three known great dimensions that encompass all universes created by Zeno. Even Zeno himself is unaware of this realm's existence. The air here is thick with a sense of the unknown, the laws of reality bending and warping as if the very fabric of the universe is different. In this strange dimension, we find familiar faces: Broly, Vegeta, Konik, and Abaddon, all standing in stunned silence. They are utterly baffled, their eyes darting around, trying to make sense of their surrounding. None of them knows how they got here, and each one instinctively raises their guard, prepared for anything. Was this some kind of ability? Did someone forcefully teleport me? Konik muttered, his voice laced with confusion and disbelief. He couldn't fathom how such a thing was possible. Konik, an angel of immense power, was supposed to be immune to forced teleportation. Not even his father could move him against his will, like he could with others. Teleportation was his domain, and in that realm, no one stood above him except Zeno himself. He racked his brain, searching for an explanation, but came up empty. He knew that none of the signs could achieve something like this. Sure, they had instant transmission, but that was a mere parlor trick compared to his abilities. His thoughts drifted to the demons, specifically the primordial demon gods, who, like angels, possessed extraordinary powers. But even then, it didn't make sense. How had this worked on him? The others exchanged wary glances, suspicion growing between them. Each one eyed the others, wondering who or what was behind this. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the possibility of sudden violence. Abaddon, seemingly uninterested in the mystery, fixed his gaze back on Vegeta. To him, it didn't matter how they had been brought here. He was convinced that one of them was responsible. But ultimately, his goal remained unchanged. He would kill them all, regardless of who was to blame. Without another word, the battle resumed, the combatants clashing with renewed intensity. The environment may have changed, but their resolve had not. None of them realized they were now fighting in an entirely different reality, one where a being far greater than any of them reigned supreme, watching their every move with unseen eyes. The stakes had just been raised, but the warriors were too focused on survival to grasp the full gravity of their situation. And that's it for today's episode, guys. If you watched to the end, then that could be an indication that you enjoy the series. So please leave a like on the video. Thank you and take care.